I never thought a simple beach trip could change the way I saw myself forever. The plan was innocent enough: a group of college friends, a rented beach house, and one last weekend before graduation scattered us in every direction. The sun, the ocean, laughter, a few too many sodas, that was supposed to be it. But somehow, that weekend became the moment everything I thought I knew about who I was began to shift. It started with a dare. Well, technically, it started with my best friend Lily, the kind of person who could convince you to do anything with that mischievous spark in her eyes. She'd been packing her things in our shared dorm room when she pulled out a bright pink bikini, the kind with shiny straps that caught the light like glitter. "You know what would be hilarious?" she said, tossing it at me. "You wearing this to the beach." I laughed, but the joke didn't leave my head. It stuck there like a spark waiting to catch. I'd always been the quiet one, the observer, the kind of guy who blended in at the edges of things. But something about her grin that day made me wonder, what if I didn't blend in, just for once? What if I stepped out of the shadows, even if it was just for a laugh? The drive to the beach was full of sun glare, music, and everyone's voices overlapping in bursts of excitement. We'd rented this old, creaky house by the water, the kind with chipped paint and a porch that leaned slightly toward the ocean. The air smelled like salt and sunscreen, and even before we unpacked, everyone was already planning what they'd wear for the big beach day. That's when Lily reminded me. "You remember the dare, right?" she said, her voice teasing but soft around the edges. The others overheard, of course, and within seconds it became a group challenge. They cheered, laughed, egged me on. "Come on, you'd rock it. It's just a joke. We'll even help you." The funny thing is, a part of me didn't mind. A part of me was curious. I'd always admired the way people like Lily carried themselves, confident, vibrant, unafraid to take up space. I wanted to know what that felt like, even if it was under the guise of a prank. Later that evening, the girls took over the small upstairs bathroom. They pulled me in, and before I could back out, I was surrounded by makeup brushes, curling irons, and more bottles and palettes than I knew existed. The air was thick with perfume and laughter. Lily tied my hair up, then let it down again, humming as she worked, and every time I caught my reflection in the mirror, something inside me tilted a little. "Trust the process," she said, brushing powder over my cheeks. "You'll see." At first, it felt like theater, like playing a character. But somewhere between the eyeliner and the lip gloss, something shifted. The person looking back at me wasn't just a version of me in costume. She was someone I didn't recognize, but somehow already knew. My jaw looked softer, my eyes brighter. The more they added mascara, shimmer, a pair of dangling earrings, the more the reflection made sense in a way that scared me a little. Lily held up the bikini next, still smiling. "You ready for your debut?" I almost said no. My heart was pounding like I'd just run a mile. But I couldn't stop staring at my reflection. The mix of nerves and curiosity burned through me, and I found myself nodding before I even meant to. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Let's do it." They cheered again, all in good fun, but the sound felt far away. I slipped into the bathroom to change. When I looked down at the swimsuit in my hands, I thought about how ridiculous this all was. But when I finally put it on, adjusted the straps, and looked at myself again, the laughter faded. There was something vulnerable about it, something raw. It wasn't funny anymore, it was electric. The mirror showed someone alive in a way I hadn't seen before. My shoulders looked different, my posture changed, without me thinking about it. I wasn't pretending anymore. When I stepped out, everyone gasped, and then there was laughter, but the good kind, the shocked kind, the kind that said, "Oh my God, you actually pulled it off." Lily clapped her hands together and said, "You're slaying that bikini." And for some reason, that word, slaying, echoed in my head like a heartbeat. That night, we went down to the water's edge, the waves glowing faintly under the moonlight. Everyone was still laughing, playing, splashing, but I stood there for a while, feeling the sand between my toes, the cool air against my skin. The ocean sounded different that night, deeper somehow, like it understood something I didn't. I thought it was just a dare. I thought it would end there. But when I went to bed that night, still wearing the faint trace of makeup and the echo of Lily's words, I couldn't sleep. Because deep down, I knew that something inside me had woken up, and it wasn't going to go back to sleep. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the thin curtains, warm and golden, painting everything in a soft glow. I woke up feeling different, not in a huge, cinematic way, but in those small, quiet details that only you notice about yourself. The way my heartbeat felt lighter. The way my thoughts seemed to hum. Everyone else was already downstairs, the sound of breakfast and laughter drifting up through the old floorboards. I stretched, yawning, and for a second, I caught sight of myself in the mirror above the dresser. My hair was still a little tousled, but the faint hint of mascara smudged beneath my eyes reminded me of last night. I froze. That reflection wasn't just me waking up, it was her again. The same person who had looked back from the bathroom mirror, standing on the edge of the ocean, alive in a way I couldn't name. I thought maybe it was just a mood, that if I showered, if I brushed everything away, it would all feel normal again. But when I tried, it didn't. Washing away the makeup didn't wash away the feeling. It was still there, buried in the way my reflection moved, the way my face softened when I tilted my head. When I came downstairs, Lily noticed first. "You okay?" she asked, holding a mug of coffee with both hands. I shrugged. "Yeah, just thinking."
She grinned.
"About last night?" I nodded, and she laughed, that musical sound she always made when she knew more than she was saying. "You did kind of steal the show," she said. "I mean, I wasn't kidding, you slayed that bikini." Everyone was shocked. I laughed too, but it came out quiet, almost shy. "It was just for fun," I said. "Was it?" she asked, tilting her head. That question lingered. The rest of the morning passed in the kind of lazy rhythm that only beach trips have: sunscreen, music, snacks, and the smell of salt in the air. But beneath it all, something was buzzing inside me, a curiosity I couldn't shake. The girls were laying out clothes for another day by the water: sundresses, cover-ups, hats. I watched them laugh and pose, the sunlight catching on their hair and jewelry, and I felt that ache again. Not jealousy, exactly. Just a wish to belong in that picture. Lily caught me looking. She smiled knowingly, walked over, and handed me a floppy straw hat. "You can borrow this," she said casually. I blinked. "For what?" She shrugged. "You'll see." Before I could ask, she disappeared into the bedroom and came back with a loose, flowy beach wrap, turquoise and light as air. She tossed it at me. "It'll look good over your swimsuit. You are wearing it again, right?" The thought made my stomach twist. Part of me wanted to laugh it off, say no, say that the joke was over. But another part of me, the part that remembered how it felt to stand by the ocean like that, whispered yes. I hesitated, but Lily saw it in my eyes. "Hey," she said softly. "It's just us. No one's judging. You looked happy yesterday. Like, really happy." Her words hit deeper than I expected. So I nodded. And this time, there was no laughter, no dare, no audience waiting for a punchline. Just Lily helping me adjust the straps, brushing out my hair, tying the wrap around my waist. When I looked in the mirror again, it didn't feel like pretending. It felt like permission. We walked down to the beach, the sun already high, the air thick with heat and salt. A few people glanced at me, maybe curious, maybe surprised, but it didn't sting the way I thought it would. The sand was hot beneath my feet, the ocean glittering like liquid glass. "Come on," Lily called, running ahead into the water. I followed, the wrap fluttering behind me like something alive. And when the waves hit my legs, cool and sharp, I laughed out loud without meaning to. It felt like freedom. For a moment, I forgot who I was supposed to be. I was just someone moving through sunlight, someone who didn't have to hide. Later, as we lay on our towels, the sound of the waves mixing with the hum of nearby voices, Lily turned to me and said, "You know, you really have something." I frowned. "Something?" She nodded. "It's hard to explain. It's like you were meant to be seen this way." Her words sank deep, and I didn't know what to say, because a small, scared part of me already agreed with her. That night, long after everyone else had fallen asleep, I stood in front of the mirror again, holding the bikini in my hands. It wasn't about a dare anymore.
It wasn't about them.
It was about the quiet, trembling truth that was starting to surface, the one I wasn't sure I was ready to face. I whispered to the reflection, like a secret between us. "Who are you?" And for the first time, the reflection almost answered. The next morning, the beach house was quiet. A soft breeze fluttered through the curtains, carrying the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore. I woke early, before anyone else, and sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, staring at the bikini draped across the chair. The sunlight made it shimmer, almost daring me to pick it up again. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that it was just fabric, just a silly moment I'd taken too far. But deep down, I knew better. It wasn't about the clothes. It was about what I felt when I wore them, the calm certainty that crept through me like sunlight warming cold skin. I got dressed quietly, in my usual shorts and t-shirt, but as I looked in the mirror, it felt like I was putting on armor. Something that didn't quite fit anymore. When I stepped outside, the sand was cool from the night air. The sky was painted in soft oranges and pinks, and the sea looked endless. I stood there barefoot, letting the tide brush against my toes. I thought maybe if I stayed like that long enough, the waves would carry away the confusion building in my chest. Lily found me a few minutes later. She was wrapped in a towel, her hair still damp from a quick swim. She didn't say anything at first, just stood next to me, watching the sunrise. "Finally," she said, "you've been quiet." "I'm just thinking," I said, my voice barely audible over the waves. She nodded, waiting. She always knew how to give space without making it feel like distance. After a long pause, I asked, "Did you ever feel like you were pretending to be someone else just to make sense to other people?" She turned toward me, the light catching her eyes. "All the time," she said softly. "But I think pretending can sometimes lead you to the truth. You try on things, clothes, names, ideas, until one of them finally feels right." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I didn't answer, but she could tell I was thinking about it. That afternoon, everyone wanted to go into town, to grab food, shop for souvenirs, take pictures by the pier. I almost stayed behind, but Lily wouldn't let me.
"Come on," she said.
"You can't hide now. You're part of the crew." So I went. We wandered through narrow streets filled with the smell of grilled food and sea air. The girls stopped at a small boutique, the kind of place with bright summer dresses and hats that looked like something out of a postcard. I hovered near the entrance, not sure what to do, but Lily waved me inside. It was strange how natural it felt to be there. The racks of colorful fabrics, the chatter of the shopkeeper, the sound of hangers sliding. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it, a white sundress, simple but elegant, swaying slightly from the ceiling fan's breeze. Lily followed my gaze.
"Try it," she said.
I froze. No way. Why not? Because I hesitated, not knowing what excuse to give. Because it would feel too real? Because I was afraid of what I'd see? She smiled gently. "It's just a dress. No one's judging you here." I took a slow breath and nodded. The shopkeeper didn't blink when I asked to use the fitting room, just smiled and handed me the dress. My hands trembled as I held it, the fabric soft as air. Inside the small fitting room, the world went quiet. I slipped out of my clothes, heart pounding, and slid the dress over my head. It fit almost perfectly, snug at the waist, light on my shoulders. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a joke or a dare. I saw someone standing tall, uncertain but glowing from the inside out. For the first time, it wasn't about trying to look like someone else. It was about recognizing myself. When I stepped out, Lily's mouth fell open, and then she smiled so wide it made my chest tighten. "You look beautiful," she said. That word, beautiful, it wasn't one I'd ever thought could belong to me. But hearing it felt like something unlocked inside me, quiet, undeniable. We bought the dress. I insisted on paying, but Lily refused. "Consider it a gift," she said, "for being brave enough to see yourself." That night, after everyone went to sleep, I put it on again. The house was silent except for the waves outside and the distant creak of the wooden floorboards. I stood in front of the mirror and whispered, "Maybe this is who I've been trying to find." I didn't know what it meant yet, or where it would lead. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid to find out. The morning after I bought the sundress, everything felt strangely heavier. It wasn't guilt exactly, but a kind of awareness, like I'd stepped through a door and couldn't quite remember what the world looked like before I crossed it. I woke up earlier than everyone again, and the light coming through the window caught the edge of the dress, where I'd hung it on the closet door. It glowed faintly in the sun, soft and impossible to ignore. I didn't put it on right away. I just stared at it, that quiet war inside me louder than any voice in the house. Part of me wanted to pretend the last 2 days hadn't happened, that I could just laugh it off, go back to being the version of me everyone expected. But another part, deeper and stronger, whispered that it was already too late for that. Downstairs, Lily was making pancakes. She looked up when I entered and smiled like she'd been expecting me. "You didn't sleep much, did you?" she said. I shook my head, sitting on one of the stools by the counter. "Too much on my mind." "Like what?" I hesitated. Then the words came out before I could stop them. "I don't know who I am anymore."
She didn't laugh. She didn't tease.
She just nodded slowly, her expression softening. "That's not a bad thing," she said. "It just means you're finally asking the right questions." I didn't answer. I just watched her pour syrup over a stack of pancakes, the smell of butter and sugar filling the room. I wanted to believe her, but the questions in my chest felt too big, too tangled. When the others came down, the noise returned, laughter, plans, music. It was easy to fade into the background again, to pretend everything was normal. But when Lily asked what everyone wanted to do for our last night at the beach, something inside me stirred. "Let's do a bonfire," she suggested. "One last night under the stars." Everyone cheered at the idea. And just like that, the day filled up with preparations, collecting wood, buying marshmallows, setting up blankets. It gave me something to focus on, but every time I caught my reflection in a window or the shine of a car mirror, I saw flashes of that other me. The one in the bikini, the one in the dress, the one who looked like she belonged. As the sun began to set, streaks of gold and violet spread across the horizon. The beach looked almost unreal, glowing under the fading light. I slipped away from the others and went upstairs. The house was quiet, the air heavy with the smell of salt and sunscreen. The sundress hung there waiting, still radiant in the fading light. I hesitated only a second before putting it on. When I stepped outside, the air was cool and the sound of laughter drifted from the beach. I walked slowly down the path, the hem of the dress brushing against my legs, the fabric whispering with every step. The closer I got, the more my heart pounded. They saw me before I said anything. At first there was silence, just the crackle of the fire, the hum of the waves. Then Lily smiled. A few others did too. One of the guys, Ben, whistled softly, not mocking, just surprised.
"Wow," he said.
"Didn't see that coming." I froze. My mind braced for laughter, teasing, something sharp. But none of it came. Instead, Lily stood, her face glowing in the firelight. "You look amazing," she said simply. And then she hugged me. That moment, the warmth of the fire, the sound of the ocean, the soft murmur of friends around me, it all blurred together. For the first time, I felt like I didn't need to hide, like I could breathe. Later, as the stars appeared one by one, we sat in a loose circle around the fire. People talked, joked, shared stories, but I found myself staring at the flames, lost in thought. The flickering light reflected in my eyes, and I realized how far I'd come in just a few days. I wasn't ready to label it yet. I didn't know what it meant for my future. But I knew this much. I couldn't go back to pretending I didn't see her in the mirror. When the fire began to die down, Lily leaned over and whispered, "You're really something, you know that?" I laughed softly. "What does that even mean?" "It means you're brave," she said. "Most people spend their whole lives running from who they are. You faced it head on, even if you didn't mean to." I wanted to believe her. Maybe I even did. Because as the last embers faded and the sound of the waves filled the silence, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't just slaying a bikini anymore. I was slaying every version of myself that had been too afraid to exist. And for the first time, that felt like freedom. The morning after the bonfire felt like waking from a dream I didn't want to end. The sun was just peeking over the horizon, the sky painted in shades of gold and pale blue, and the house still smelled faintly of smoke and sea air. I stood on the porch with a cup of coffee in my hands, barefoot, listening to the rhythmic hush of the waves. Every sound felt sharper somehow, every detail more vivid, like my senses had finally decided to wake up with me. Inside, everyone was still asleep except Lily. She joined me quietly, wrapping a blanket over her shoulders. We didn't say anything at first. We just watched the waves roll in and out. The ocean had always been constant, but that morning, it felt like it was breathing with me, calm, alive, steady. After a while, she said, "You know, I'm really proud of you." I glanced over. "For what?" "For letting yourself be seen," she said. "That's not easy. A lot of people never even try." Her voice was gentle, but there was something in it that struck me deeply. I'd spent so long trying to be invisible, to blend in, to keep people from noticing anything that didn't fit the version of me they expected. And yet, for a few days on that beach, I hadn't just been seen, I'd lived out loud. "I don't even know who I'm supposed to be now," I admitted. She smiled faintly. "That's the best part. You don't have to decide yet." That day felt like a goodbye even before we packed. The weekend had stretched out like forever, but suddenly it was over. The house filled with the sound of luggage zippers and music from someone's speaker. People were laughing, hugging, promising to stay in touch. It all felt normal again, almost too normal, like the world was resetting itself while I was still standing between two versions of me. When I went upstairs to grab the last of my things, I found the bikini still folded neatly in the corner of my drawer. I hesitated before picking it up, feeling the fabric between my fingers. For a moment, I almost left it there, like leaving a secret behind. But something in me said no. So I packed it carefully, tucking it between my clothes, a small reminder that the person I'd found at the beach didn't have to disappear when I left. On the drive home, everyone was singing along to songs and joking about the trip, but my mind was somewhere else. I kept seeing flashes, the firelight on the sand, the way the sundress fluttered in the wind, the sound of Lily's voice saying "You look amazing." Those memories burned quietly in my chest, warm and persistent. When we finally got back to campus, the familiar buildings looked different somehow, smaller, maybe. Or maybe I'd just grown. That evening, I sat in front of my dorm mirror again. The same one where it had all started. I pulled the bikini out of my bag, set it on the desk, and stared at it for a long time. It wasn't about a dare anymore. It wasn't about impressing anyone or proving anything. It was a reminder of a feeling, that spark of freedom, that glimpse of authenticity that had started to feel like home. I reached for my makeup bag, the one Lily had insisted I keep. My hands trembled slightly, but this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from anticipation. As I traced a line of eyeliner across my eyes, I watched the reflection shift again. My heart steadied. My breathing slowed. Each brushstroke brought that version of me back to life, not just the one from the beach, but the one who had existed quietly all along, waiting for a chance to be seen. When I finally smiled at the mirror, it wasn't forced. It wasn't shy. It was real. Lily knocked gently on the door, then peeked in. "There you are," she said softly. "You look peaceful." I turned toward her, uncertain but lighter somehow. "Do you think people will understand?" "Maybe," she said, stepping inside. "Maybe not. But they don't have to. You just have to understand yourself." Her words lingered in the room long after she left. That night, I fell asleep with the sound of the ocean still echoing in my head. I dreamed of the waves, of sunlight and laughter, of the girl in the bikini walking confidently along the shore. Only this time, she wasn't a stranger. She was me. The first week back after the beach felt like trying to fit into a life that had shrunk a little too small. Classes resumed, deadlines returned, and everything around me moved with that relentless, familiar rhythm. But inside, I wasn't the same. I kept catching myself daydreaming, tracing the sound of the ocean in my mind, replaying that night by the fire when everything had felt right for the first time in forever. I thought maybe it would fade, that it was just a leftover feeling from a weekend that had been too perfect to last. But every morning, when I looked in the mirror, I saw hints of her again, the person I'd found at the beach. The curve of a smile, the softness in my eyes, the quiet strength that hadn't been there before. It wasn't just about appearance anymore. It was about the way I carried myself, the way I wanted to exist. Lily noticed it too. We had a class together on Wednesdays, and afterward, she'd always wait for me outside. One afternoon, as we walked across campus, she said, "You've been glowing lately." I laughed. Glowing?
Yeah.
Like you stopped pretending. Her words caught me off guard. I didn't even know I'd been doing that so much, pretending. Pretending to be fine, to fit in, to act like the weekend at the beach hadn't cracked something open. That night, I opened my closet and pulled out the sundress again. I hesitated, my fingers brushing the soft fabric. I didn't have the safety of the beach or the noise of laughter to hide behind this time. It was just me, in my small dorm room, heart pounding in the quiet. I slipped it on anyway. When I turned toward the mirror, the world seemed to still. The hum of the air conditioner, the faint sounds of music down the hall, they all faded until it was just me and my reflection. I looked different under the dorm light, sharper, less magical than under the sun, but somehow more real. I whispered to my reflection, barely breathing, "You're still here." It was a small thing, but it grounded me. Because part of me had been afraid that the beach had been a fantasy, a place where I could exist only for a weekend before real life demanded I erase her again. But seeing her here, in this ordinary room, made it clear that she wasn't a vacation version of me. She was me, no matter where I stood. A few days later, Lily convinced me to join her for coffee downtown. It was one of those sunny afternoons when everyone seemed to be out walking, laughing, alive. As we sipped iced lattes, she leaned forward and said, "You know, I've been thinking about the beach." I smiled. "Me too." She nodded. "It didn't just change you. It changed how I see you. I don't think I ever realized how much you'd been holding back." I looked down, stirring my drink. "It's scary," I admitted. "Part of me wants to just be. But another part keeps worrying about what people will say." "That's normal," she said. "But you know what's scarier? Living your whole life wondering what would have happened if you hadn't been brave enough to find out." Her words sank deep. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake thinking about everything, the laughter, the sunlight, the way the ocean had reflected the sky. And then I thought about how I wanted to live moving forward. Not in fear, not in hiding. So I got up, turned on the small desk lamp, and opened my notebook. I started writing, not an essay or an assignment, but thoughts, fragments, little pieces of what I'd been feeling. I wrote about the moment I'd put on the bikini, about the way my reflection had felt like meeting a stranger who was already family. I wrote about the ocean, about Lily, about the courage that had crept in quietly and refused to leave. By the time the sun came up, my hand ached and my eyes were heavy, but my heart felt light. For the first time, I'd said the truth out loud, even if it was only on paper. When I met Lily the next day, I handed her the notebook. "Can you read it?" I asked. She flipped through the pages, her expression softening with every line. When she looked up, her eyes shimmered. "This is beautiful," she said quietly. "You should be proud." I didn't know if I was proud yet, but I was starting to be unafraid. And that was something. It was mid-October, and the campus had taken on that crisp, golden look I loved, leaves crunching underfoot, sunlight glinting off trees in bursts of amber. But even as the world around me shifted into the season, inside I felt like I was still standing at the edge of that beach, watching waves curl endlessly toward the shore. By now, wearing the sundress or even small touches of makeup in private had become routine. It wasn't about showing off. It was about recognizing the person I'd found and letting her exist. Each day I tried something new, a subtle lip gloss, a soft blush, a way of walking that made me feel like I could breathe differently in my own skin. Each day, it felt a little less like pretending and a little more like truth. One Friday afternoon, Lily invited me to a costume party. "It's just for fun," she said. "But you could maybe dress up as you fully. You know, your version of you." I laughed nervously. My version of me? Isn't that a little obvious? Not obvious, she said firmly, authentic. Her confidence was infectious. I spent the next few days preparing, choosing a dress that shimmered like the sun on the ocean, picking subtle makeup, even practicing how I wanted to carry myself. By the time the night arrived, my heart was pounding, not from nerves alone, but from anticipation. When I stepped into the party, I felt every eye on me. Some faces lit up with surprise, others with curiosity, and a few, the ones who truly knew me, with quiet awe. For a second, I froze, imagining laughter, judgment, awkward whispers. But then I remembered the beach, the fire, Lily's voice telling me I was brave, and I exhaled. I walked in slowly, deliberately, letting my reflection in the hall mirrors guide me. It felt electric, the way I moved, the way my dress caught the light, the way I realized I owned the room without having to apologize for it. People smiled, complimented me, and even the ones who didn't say anything gave me space without judgment. At one point, Lily came up beside me, nudged me gently, and whispered, "See? You're unstoppable." I laughed quietly, a little breathless. "Feels different." "Different is good," she said, her eyes sparkling. Later, as I stepped outside to get some air, the cool night breeze brushing against my arms, I realized something profound. This wasn't about a bikini or a dress or makeup. It was about claiming space, about allowing the world to see all of me, the parts one had hidden, the parts one had feared, the parts one hadn't even known existed. I stayed outside a while, watching the streetlights flicker, thinking about the waves, the bonfire, the quiet conversations with Lily, and even the notebook I had poured my thoughts into. All of it had led here, to this moment, where I finally felt like I could stand tall and not shrink from anyone, not friends, not strangers, not even myself. And then I made a small, quiet promise to the reflection in the mirror. A promise that whatever path I walked next, I would keep finding her. I would keep letting her out. When I returned to the party, the laughter, music, and chatter felt different, richer somehow, like the air itself was more alive. I didn't need validation anymore. I just needed to keep moving forward. And that night, as I laughed and danced with friends, I realized something terrifying and exhilarating at once. I was no longer hiding, and I didn't want to. For the first time in my life, the mirror wasn't a place of doubt or questioning. It was a place of truth, a place of welcome. And in that moment, I understood something I had only glimpsed at the beach. Transformation isn't just about what you wear. It's about seeing yourself, really seeing yourself, and deciding, finally, that you deserve to exist fully, in every light and shadow. I wasn't done discovering yet. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the journey. After that party, life felt expanded. Somehow, ordinary days seemed fuller, richer, like the air had stretched just enough to hold everything I'd been hiding. I walked across campus differently, subtly, without needing anyone to notice. Small things, the way I held my shoulders, the way I tilted my head, the way my eyes met reflections in windows, all of it felt like a quiet assertion of who I was becoming. One afternoon, Lily and I were sitting by the lake near campus. The water mirrored the sky perfectly, still and endless. We were supposed to be studying, but neither of us had opened our books. I watched the ripples move across the surface and said, softly, "Do you ever feel like you're finally seeing yourself, but it scares you?" She turned to me, her expression calm, thoughtful. "Every day," she admitted. "Because seeing yourself isn't always comfortable, but it's honest. And honesty is powerful." Her words struck me, more than I expected. I realized that for the first time, I wasn't trying to fit anyone's mold, not my friends, not society, not even my old self. I was just being. And it terrified me to be this vulnerable. But at the same time, it thrilled me. Later that week, I decided to take a walk downtown. I wore a simple, flowing dress, one that wasn't flashy, but felt right. I kept my steps slow, deliberate, noticing everything around me. People glanced, of course. Some curious, some neutral. But no one laughed. No one judged. And in that moment, I realized that I had been holding my own gaze hostage more than anyone else had been holding me back. When I returned to campus, Lily was waiting by our usual bench. She smiled knowingly. "You look different," she said. "Different how?" I asked, half laughing, half anxious. "Like you finally stopped apologizing for being yourself," she said. It hit me like a spark. Maybe that's what all this had been about. Not the bikini, not the sundress, not even the parties. It was about the permission I'd finally given myself to exist fully, without compromise. That night, I stood in front of the mirror again. I had grown more confident in my appearance, more familiar with the reflection staring back. I played with my hair, brushed a little mascara over my lashes, and tilted my head, smiling at the person looking back. She wasn't a costume. She wasn't a disguise. She was me, fully formed in a way I hadn't known I could be. I remembered the words Lily had whispered that first night at the beach. "You're really something." And now, in the quiet of my dorm, I understood them fully. Not because of the dress, the makeup, or the daring choice to stand out, but because I had chosen to see myself, without shame or hesitation. Weeks passed, and with each day, the transformation became less about moments and more about living consistently in my truth. I started experimenting with different styles, sometimes subtle, sometimes bold. But each choice was deliberate. Each brushstroke, each outfit, each small act of self-expression was a statement. I exist. And I matter. One afternoon, as I walked across campus wearing a new, soft pastel dress, a friend I hadn't known well waved. "You look great today," she said. No questions, no hesitation. Just a simple acknowledgement. And I realized that part of the fear I'd carried, the fear of judgment, the fear of rejection, had been far heavier than reality. People weren't watching to tear me down. They were watching, and some smiled. And that was enough. By the time the semester rolled toward winter, I had settled into a rhythm. I still had doubts, moments of hesitation, but the fear no longer dictated my choices. I owned the reflection in the mirror, the person who had emerged on the beach, the person who had grown stronger with each day. And sometimes, late at night, I would reach for that bikini again, the one that had started it all, holding it gently, remembering the waves, the bonfire, the laughter, the firelight on my skin. It wasn't about wearing it anymore. It was about remembering courage. Because the truth I had discovered, that the reflection in the mirror could be my guide rather than my judge, had changed me forever. Winter arrived quietly, dusting the campus with frost and soft, shimmering mornings. The days grew shorter, but I felt lighter. There was a calmness now, the kind that comes when you've faced something difficult and emerged on the other side, not unscathed, but stronger. I still had my doubts, moments when I wondered if I was too much or too bold or too visible, but I didn't shrink from them. I faced them, as I had learned to face everything else. One snowy evening, I went to the student center to meet Lily and some friends. The wind bit at my cheeks, but it didn't make me turn inward. I wore a long, warm coat over a soft dress, and for the first time, I realized how much more I moved freely in my own skin. People noticed, sure, some glanced curiously, others smiled warmly, but no one judged. I had grown used to it. And even more importantly, I had grown used to myself. Inside, the warmth of the room enveloped me. The chatter, the clatter of cups, the music playing softly, it all felt like a home I'd never truly known before. Lily waved me over, her grin wide, the kind that always made me feel safe. "You're glowing again," she said, sliding into the seat beside me. I smiled. I just feel like myself." I admitted. "That's more than enough," she said simply, her eyes serious for a moment. "You deserve that." It was true. I had spent so many years trying to fit into expectations, to blend, to hide. That feeling like myself was almost foreign. But now it wasn't fleeting. It was steady. It was real. Later that night, after everyone had left, I returned to my dorm. I stood before the mirror again, brushing my hair back, adjusting my dress. The reflection that stared back was confident but soft, alive but familiar. I touched my face gently, tracing the curve of my cheeks, the line of my jaw, the warmth in my eyes. She wasn't a costume.
She wasn't an act.
She was me, fully and unashamedly. I remember the first time I had worn the bikini at the beach. I remembered the nervous laughter, the dare, the thrill of stepping into something unknown. That small, daring act had sparked a transformation I hadn't expected. And now, months later, I realized it had never been about clothing or appearances. It had been about courage, the courage to see myself, to honor myself, to exist fully and boldly in my own skin. As I sat quietly in the dim light of my room, I reached for the notebook I had written in months ago. Flipping through it, I saw the journey, from hesitation and fear to recognition and acceptance. I read passages I had written in the middle of the night, full of doubt and hope, and I realized something profound. I had grown into someone who could live authentically, someone who could step into the world without fear of judgment or rejection. And I knew, with certainty, that this was only the beginning. Because transformation isn't a single moment. It's a collection of choices, of small acts of bravery strung together over time. It's deciding every day to be honest, to be present, and to honor the self you discovered in the quiet spaces of reflection and courage. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving or observing. I was living. I was choosing. And I was free.